Hi everyone, this is Lynn Colson with Avery's Owlery, averysowlery.com, and I'm here again today with another video and a tip on how I created this card with this embossing folder. It's super easy to do, and I wanted to share that with you today. You can see the inside. So the first thing that I did is I embossed the Whisper White with the Magnolia 3D embossing folder. But before I did that, I actually inked up the folder so that I could get some of this color showing through on my embossed image. So I want to show you how I did that, okay? So I have a piece of Whisper White here that is cut to 3 1/4 by 4 7/8, and it's going to go into the folder right like that. It's not going to pick up everything, about like that. All right, I want to get mostly this larger Magnolia, not so much the smaller one. But before I do that, I'm going to use ink on my embossing folder. And so if you're looking at your embossing folder and you see the Stampin' Up! Emblem right here, you want to open it up, and then on this side, the side that has the Stampin' Up! Emblem on it, this is the side that you want to ink. This side is the one that gets pushed up, and so that's the side that gives you the texture, so you can see like this. So it's pushed up, so that's the emboss side. The other side is the deboss side, and sometimes we will emboss the deboss side, and I'll show you what this card looked like, or the embossing part looked like when I did it on the other side, and why I like this side better. So first I'm going to take the smaller areas, and I'm going to take a dauber, and this is my Daffodil Delight dauber, and I'm just going to dab on the area where those stamens are for the flower. And then I'm going to take my Petal Pink dauber. I'm going to ink that up, and I'm going to daub on these petals here. And it's not going to go all the way out to the end. And it's really just a very, very subtle color. There's not a lot going on there. And you can dab over the top of the yellow part a little bit. And I'm going to kind of slide it over here. It's kind of hard to see with this Petal Pink. It's really, really light. It just adds a little bit of emphasis to it. Okay, then I'm going to take this Mossy Meadow dauber, and I'm going to daub on these leaves. And that'll just bring out those highlights of the detail on the leaves. Make sure you get all 3 of them. And it's okay if you kind of go over the lines. It's that kind of a look, okay? So you can kind of see how that's showing up on there. Now I'm going to take my paper, and I'm going to lay it here where I want it. So I know I want to pick up all of that flower. And I'm going to huff on this side just to kind of wet that ink up again, and then I'll run it through the embossing folder and in my Big Shot. So hang on a second. Close that, okay, and over to the embossing folder. And there's what it looks like. So you see you've got lots of color on here. This one I did a little bit heavier certainly than my first one, but you can certainly see how the details are coming out. Oops, there, see I did a petal instead of a leaf. I need to pay more attention to that when I'm doing it on my video. But that's what it looks like. That's the technique. You know, we all make mistakes. I wanted to show you what it looks like if you do it on the deboss side. I thought that this was what I was going to do at first, and so I did it on the deboss side, and then I cut it out. I just didn't like it. I didn't feel like it gave it as much emphasis as it did when you did it on the emboss side. So that's why you need to do it on the side that has the Stampin' Up! Emblem on that, okay? So the rest of this card is primarily assembly. I did cut the card front to be a little bit different. So it has, it's 5.5 this way by 8 inches instead of 8.5. And then it's scored at 4 1/4 so that you get this little border showing through from the back, from the inside of the card. So for my layers, I've already told you this white is 3 1/4 by 4 7/8, and then this piece of DSP is 4 by 5. This DSP is 3.5 by 5 1/8. So it just makes a nice, pretty border around that. So I'm just going to use my snail to adhere that. Oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to adhere that to my background piece. And then before I attach this to my card front, I want to show you how I tied the bow. So this bow technique I learned from Julie DiMatteo. She's at thepaperpixie.com. And I've shared this with my club members and my class members, and they just love it. And so I wanted to share with you her technique for tying a bow. So take a block, any kind of block. This is your regular D-size block that I'm using here. You're going to take a block. You can use your cell phone. You can use a stamp pad. It doesn't matter. The size is not as important. But you're going to tie a bow around this. So I've got it underneath. I've got the spool in my right hand, and I'm going to pull the spool over to the left, take this from the bottom over the top and underneath, and tie, and then pull it straight so you've got ribbon going in all 4 directions. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I always make my bow with the one that's on the bottom. So it's like that. So I'm going to make a bow with my right hand, holding it with my left finger. And then I'm going to switch, put my right finger there, wrap it around, and pull the bow through. And obviously it's really huge and big, but then you just take this and straighten it out and make it the way you want it. It's really an easy technique, especially if you're using smaller ribbon. Sometimes tying with this larger 3/4 inch ribbon can be a little bit tough. So I apologize if I'm taking too long. But you just want to slide that so that you've got the ribbon the way you want it. I'm going to grab my ribbon scissors, and I'm going to cut the ends, and you just want to take it at an angle so that this is straight with the end of the loop. And again on this side, straight with the end of the loop. And there you've got your ribbon. Now here's the great part. You take it and you cut it on the back. And what that does is that gives you a ribbon tied that you can just wrap around and put your tape anywhere you need to. It's so much easier than trying to tie a bow around this paper because it's kind of flimsy and it moves around on you. And look at that. Beautiful. Now I'm going to add this to my card front with dimensionals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I usually put about 6. And then pick these little papers off that get all over my floor, that my Roomba picks up for me whenever it runs. And then I'm going to add this to my card front with the cutoff piece on the right. I purposely did not put a sentiment on the front of my card for this because I just felt like it was enough, and especially with the inside, that I didn't really feel like that it needed it. I know a lot of you like to have sentiments on the front, and I usually do too, but this time I chose not to. So that's the front of the card, and you can see I put the flower going the other direction, which looks just as great, even though I have that stupid petal that's green, but you know what I mean. Now I'm going to take a piece of designer series paper. This is all from the Magnolia suite of products. So this piece of DSP is cut to 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm just going to adhere that on the inside. Don't need a lot of snail. I find that 3 pieces is enough. Lay that in there like that. So you can see that little strip right there. It looks nice. And then I did a little bit different for my sentiment on the inside. And I've got a piece of Whisper White here that is 3 by 4, and I'm going to adhere that inside. See how it goes like that. I'm lining it up with that stripe there so it looks nice and straight. And then this piece is a piece of Mossy Meadow, and it is 3 1/8 by 1 1/2. And I'll attach that on there, and then I'll show you how I did my sentiment. Okay, so to do the sentiment, it's another little trick that I used, that I did. So this stamp set is the Good Morning Magnolia, and it comes with the journey of life is best shared with a friend. We'll get through this together. A long time ago, when I first got this stamp set, probably last year, I really liked the we'll get through this together, but I didn't want the journey of life is best shared with a friend. So I did a drastic move and I cut it apart. So I actually used utility knife or whatever, and I actually cut the stamp set in half, so that one, you can see that it goes back together like that. Now I could still use it with it together. It would be fine like that, but I can also now use it like this, and I don't have to try and ink up just the words that I want. I can actually just use it as a regular stamp. So I put it in my Stamparatus. I've lined it up where I think I want it to go. Here's my piece of paper. This piece of Whisper White is 2 5/8 by 1, and I've got it lined up. But one thing that I wanted to show you that I always do is I check to make sure that my sentiment is straight. And I use this deluxe foam mat that comes from Stampin' Up, and I suggest if you have a Stamparatus that you get the deluxe foam mat as well. And because I just leave mine in here all the time. And then this is actually, a lot of you have asked me about these. This is a product that actually goes with our competitor product called the MISTI. This is an accessory pack called Creative Corners, and I bought it when I had a MISTI. I don't use my MISTI anymore now that I use my Stamparatus, but I have found that this little corner piece right here works great to pull the paper out away from the corner, where sometimes it's harder to stamp down there. I don't end up having to use magnets as much because it just tucks right in there, and then I can use my stamp to stamp it on there. So I've got it lined up where I think it's going to go, and then I'm going to move this out of the way, and because this is a plastic coated deluxe foam mat, I'm going to ink up my Stamparatus with my Mossy Meadow, because that's the color I'm going to use. I'm going to press it down, and I'm going to validate that my stamp is actually straight. So we'll get through this together. Everything looks all lined up and straight. Then I'm going to clean it off, because I don't want anything to get on the back side of my paper, just in case I need to use the back side. I'm going to line my paper back up, ink it back up, and you saw how I could wipe that off, that ink off of the mat, because it's plastic coated. You can just wipe that off. There's my sentiment, perfectly straight, because I can't stand them when they're not straight. And I'm going to add that to the inside of my card, just like that. I'm not going to use dimensionals on the inside, obviously, because that would make it a little bit puffy, hard to close. And there you go. So there's my card. We'll get through this together, which this is kind of crooked, I think. Again, can't stand it when it's crooked. There's my new card, and here's my original. You can see they're just slightly different. This depends on how much ink you used. I used a lot more ink on this one, and I wish I hadn't done that green petal instead of a pink petal, and I didn't use that green, but you get the idea about how you can use daubers to stamp on the inside with ink on the inside of your embossing folder and make it look really, really pretty. Thank you very much for joining me today, and I hope you enjoyed this video. All of my details will be on my blog, averysalary.com, and the link will be down below at the on this video on YouTube. Thank you so much. Bye.